Interestingly enough, Kubrick apparently did not believe in God. In a 1969 interview, he said, "The whole idea of God is absurd. What people don't understand, they call God. Everything we know about the universe reveals there is no God." Conversely, King said, "I made a decision to believe in God because it's better to believe than not to believe," adding that his belief became possible while in the throes of addiction. In fact, Jack Torrance's alcoholic behavior in the film is based on King's understanding of the disease of alcoholism. In the film, Jack freezes to death after doing everything he can to kill Wendy and Danny, his wife and son. No redemption there. No good or God to be seen in Kubrick's version. In the book, when Jack realizes that the boiler is going to blow, killing the Overlook Hotel and everyone in it, in a last heroic gesture, he gets Wendy and Danny to safety, saving his family over himself. Despite all of his previous bad behavior, Jack has a moment of redemption in the end. King famously hated the film for a couple of reasons, most of which perhaps is that Jack was not offered any chance for redemption. King said the movie was a big, beautiful Cadillac without no engine inside of it. He felt Jack's character had no arc and said when we first see him interviewing for the job, we know then that he's crazy as a shithouse rat. Also, another interesting difference between the book and the movie The Shining, which is Dan's ability to know things. So The Shining that's what it means in the movie. In the movie, Danny's imaginary friend is glossed over, but in the book, King makes it clear that Danny's imaginary friend is his future self visiting him, trying to warn him of what is about to happen. One of the things King played with is the idea that time is omnipresent, which is how Danny's future self can visit his child self. The film only hints at the theme of time. In one of the final shots, we see a photograph dated 1921, and front and center is good old Jack. He has been there since 1921. Earlier, we get a clue from Lloyd, the bartender, who says to Jack, "You have always been the caretaker. You will always be the caretaker." The creepy dead twins say, "Hey, Danny, come and play with us forever and forever and ever." Even Kubrick could not resist King's idea that time is a never-ending stream of repetition, and even the dead are stuck in a place of endless time. This terrible idea is great fodder for scary stories. Fortunately for us mere mortals, we can only experience time moment by moment. And tonight, right here, we have the gift of seeing 6 artists look at themes of The Shining from very divergent perspectives.
As you know, this past Monday was Indigenous Peoples Day, or Columbus Day if you prefer. That's what I would like to talk to you about today. You may wonder why I'm talking about that. You may ask, what in the hell Indigenous Peoples Day has to do with The Shining? My answer to you would be, absolutely everything, if you were paying close attention. Some film buffs and scholars agree that The Shining is about brutal mass murder, but not the murder of the Torrance family. In fact, not one of them is actually murdered in the film. Jack, played by none other than Jack Nicholson, is ultimately frozen by the unforgiving climate. His wife Wendy and son Danny, whose roles were frighteningly fulfilled by Shelley Duvall and Danny Lloyd, escaped on the snowmobile provided by the sacrifice of Dick Halloran, the cook played by Scatman Crothers. No, the mass murder that was present in every scene, every frame of the movie, was a different one. It was one that has played a much bigger role in all of our lives. In what may have seemed like a throwaway line, director Stanley Kubrick let the audience in on what would be the thematic foundation of the film. Early in the film, Stuart Ullman, the manager of the Overlook Hotel, who wore red, white, and blue, and who prominently displayed an American flag on his desk, gave the Torrance family a tour of the place. As he does, he tells them, the site is supposed to be located on an Indian burial ground, and I believe they actually had to repel a few Indian attacks as they were building it. It's the only mention of indigenous people in the film, and of course none are ever seen, but they are ever present. Wendy comments how magnificent the hotel lobby is as they walk through, and we see the beautiful artwork and decorations that adorn every foot of the walls and floors. was not mentioned is that every one of them come from Native American patterns. The rugs we see, the ones that Danny rides across on his tricycle throughout the film, all contain patterns that add to the Native American motif. As the family continues the tour, in the large food closet, where Crothers shows them the abundance of nourishment they will have during their stay, we see large containers, all well organized by type. All but one, that is. When Crothers turns to Danny and telepathically offers some ice cream, we see one canister out of place in the frame directly next to the face of the cook. The can is Calumet baking powder. The logo, an Indian head. Later, when Jackie is locked in the same storage closet, we see a section of the closet, again very conspicuously positioned, packed with organized cans of Calumet baking powder with the Indian head logo. And what about one of the creepiest and most iconic images of the movie? The river of blood flowing through the elevator doors, framed by an indigenous pattern. The image runs completely silent, like the indigenous voices silenced by their genocide. Still don't believe me? Let me tell you a short ghost story. One of the many infamous massacres of indigenous people came during the late 1700s as American frontiersmen made their way west. One of the native tribes that fought against the frontiersmen taking over their territory was the Shawnee tribe, and one of their great warriors and leaders was Chief Cornstalk. After many battles and many deaths on both sides, Chief Cornstalk sought to reach a compromise with the white men who were taking over the territory, but not all of the tribes agreed with his effort. Chief Cornstalk eventually made friends with the Americans, but in order to compel the other tribes to agree to the peace, the Americans took the chief hostage. They then took his son as well. One night, after learning of an attack by Native Americans that killed a white man, some of the frontiersmen decided that they would kill their native hostages, including Chief Cornstalk's son, and ultimately the chief himself, though they had nothing to do with the attack. Legend has it that Chief Cornstalk, as he lay there bleeding to death, put a curse on the land. He said, "I came to the fort as your friend, and you murdered me. You have murdered by my side my young son. For this, may the curse of the Great Spirit rest upon this land. May it be blighted by nature. May it even be blighted in its hopes. May the strength of its people be paralyzed by the stain of our blood." That land became Point Pleasant, West Virginia. and for more than 100 years following Cornstalk's death, the people who lived there spoke of strange plagues and fires that they believed were connected to the curse. In the early 1800s and early 1900s, a monument was built to honor the founding of Point Pleasant. The dedication was delayed because the crane that was meant to move the monument into place was struck by lightning. A few years later, the monument was struck by lightning a second time. This time it happened on the anniversary of our nation's independence, July 4th, 1921. If you remember the film The Shining well enough, you'll remember that we see an old photo on the hotel wall after Jack dies. The photo is of a gathering. The people are dressed in 1920s style party attire. In the middle is a man who looks exactly like Jack in present time. The caption on the photo reads, "Overlook Hotel, July 4th Ball, 1921. The exact day that Cornstalk's lightning struck the land that he cursed." Kubrick clearly had a haunting message he wanted to send in The Shining. As we take the frightening tour through Overlook Hotel, let's not overlook one of the greatest horrors in the history of man. On another note, you might also wonder why in this legendary horror film about murder, the one person we actually see murdered is the only black character in the film. Was Kubrick making a statement with that too? Or was it just another instance in the long history of images in film, television, and news media that has helped lead to the desensitization of violence against black people? That's a horror story for another day.